Popcorn World. Popcorn World.
Can I make you groove now? Yes, I can. So you can get this groove in the back of a can. But to make it round the world when the holes in your hand. Popcorn World. 250 flavors gonna make you smile. 250 flavors gonna make you smile. 250 flavors gonna make you smile. That's that popcorn make you smile. Ah. Popcorn World. Popcorn World. Popcorn World. Popcorn World. The Popcorn World.
Hey everybody, BetOnline is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Hi, it's Lloyd Spence, and listen, get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports, like what is going to happen to Anthony Davis for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs: basketball, Major League Baseball, NHL hockey, right to UFC, and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. So all you have to do is head to the website today, use your mobile device to get in on your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the code BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V. That's B-L-E-A-V, BLEAV. It's BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Tell them the noisemakers.
You're now listening to BLEAV in the ACC with Heisman Trophy winner and Florida State legend, Mr. Charlie Ward, Wave 3 TV, and Burn Creek Hall of Famer Kendrick Haskins, and Mr. Talking Noise himself, and of course Mama Noise's man, Lloyd Spence. And now, it's time for BLEAV in the ACC.
I was up early this morning thinking about all the things that Denny Crum got right in his life and if there was anything he got wrong. And I have to say, if there's something he got wrong, he should have claimed that Denzel thing right from the start. He had no idea that name would be so popular, but you can't win them all, but he won most of them. Good morning, everybody. This is a melancholy BLEAV in the ACC as we're starting this morning, as we are trying to bring in a who's who of Louisville sports right now to this show. We got our own Kendrick Haskins, of course, and the legend himself, who is in full retirement mode right now.
You didn't see that eye roll, did you?
Well, I mean, he's going to eye roll me, but the truth is what it is. We got a lot of legends this morning. We got great Howie Lindsey's with us.
Looks like we have Howie Lindsey in the middle of a fight.
Howie Lindsey is you know, he's probably on some parent duty this morning as well, and then now listen, and cooler than the other side of the pillow coming in is the Louisville basketball legend Luke Whitehead. Guys, we got a full house in here to remember the only Denzel we really care about this morning. And that is the legend himself, Denny Crum, who passed away this past week. And listen, it was to no surprise of anyone, because if you know what's been going on, then you know that he's been battling his health for quite some time. but it still was surprising. It still was like, wow, it really has come to an end, you know. And I gotta say, man, it kind of hit me. You know, it's one of those moments where you know something's coming, but when it comes, you go, I'm gonna need a minute. I'm gonna need a minute. I'm gonna need a second here. Because Denny, for a lot of us, shaped basketball. It shaped the love of it for us. And you don't remember. The one thing I hate about the passing of time is that the further away you get from a person's time in the sport, the sport is a little bit unkind to the legacy that they truly represented. And I think Denny is probably as glowing an example of that as anybody. But that's my opening thoughts of who he was. But we've got Kendrick, we've got Ken, we got Luke, we got Howie. Guys, I mean, what are your opening thoughts of the man himself, Denny Crum?
Kendrick, you go. You're the co-host of the show. I figure you got your tongue. You got anything to say?
Well, I figured I'd let my elders speak first, and so I'm always respectful of my elders.
I knew this was coming. I predicted this long.
You know what? Then I'll go.
I'm happy to have two of the other three people who are guests on the show on today. I knew one of the people was going to be rambunctious, but anyway. But no, Denny meant so much to the game of basketball and to this community. It's been great talking to the former players the last couple of days. I talked to Luke on the phone yesterday. Talked to Judge Derwin Webb. It was always cool to call him Judge Derwin.
It is. It's very cool.
Roger Berkman, and of course, I talked to LeBradford Smith. And the funny thing was when I asked about Denny's coaching on the floor, all of them gave the same answer without knowing what the other guy said. And it was always about how Denny thumped the game, how he would maybe run a play early in the game, and you may not see it again until the end of the game because he's seeing how you're going to react to it. And they all will have generally the same answer. So, I mean, it was just cool to see how they reminisce about Denny and how their comments were all very similar, even though I talked to them at totally different times of the day.
Wow.
Damn it.
Well, Howie, since Kent lost his place in line, you go ahead. Oh, Howie, can't hear you, buddy. Are you muted? Okay, Howie, you may have to go back out and come back in. All right. Well, Luke, you're up next. Luke, unmute yourself and let's see what you got.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. It's bittersweet. Obviously, this week a challenging and very sad day when Coach Crum passed. And the only reason I say bittersweet is because I do feel like we were able to give him his flowers while he was here. And I feel like there's a lot more flowers to give in the coming days and months and hopefully years because he's left a legacy, really a legendary legacy on and off the court. For me, when I heard the news, they sent out a communication from the basketball office to the former players and gave us a heads up that the news would be coming out. And, it was really hard to digest. Although we knew it was coming, it wasn't like you said, Lloyd, it wasn't a surprise to any of us, but when it does happen, it does take time to digest, and it is sad. And I'll tell you from my personal perspective, and I know a lot of the former players felt the same. He was a family member. He really felt for me like a honorary grandfather, I would say. I only had the pleasure of playing for him for 1 year, my freshman year. But that meant so much to me because he's the one who recruited me throughout high school. I was on the Nike circuit and I would see him at a ton of the tournament games and he'd be right there courtside and we'd talk every time. And my first sleepaway camp when I was 10 years old was at U of L.
Wow.
I came with my older brother to the Denny Crum camp. And I've known him for a long time. His family, I sent my condolences to his lovely wife Susan, who's been very close to the Louisville community. Obviously prior to marrying Coach Crum, she had a successful career in broadcasting. But after marrying Coach Crum, I think she became a queen in many ways and kept him connected. She did a wonderful job of keeping him connected to the former players through text message, email, phone calls, all of those things. And I could go on for a long time of memories and stories, personal stories to share. I'll wait on that, but I did want to say that for me, his and I know it's hard to say, but for me, his legacy was even more important after I played for him. So I played for him for 1 year. My freshman year wasn't a wonderful year. It was the year he ended up retiring. We didn't have a ton of wins, but I would say I learned a lot from him, and it went well beyond the court. It was a lot of life lessons. It's how to be a humble leader, how to be loving, even during challenging times. His character stayed strong, I would say, through good times and bad times. So, to get to the top of the mountaintop and to have all these fans and to be celebrated, but then to always be humble enough to never turn down a photo or an autograph or a handshake or a hug. He meant a lot to myself and I'd say all of you on this call as well, and the entire community.
Yeah. Howie, I'm gonna get you in now because I know you gotta get out of here in just a little bit. But you covered University of Louisville for a long time, but you've been a fan even longer. What were your memories of Denny Crum? Oh, Howie, you still can't hear you, buddy. And I know what you're saying is great because you're great.
I would say, Howie, you might have to park, buddy. You might have to pull over for a second and figure this out.
You may have to. I'll just say this publicly. It's in your settings. You got to go to your settings. Okay. Kid,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Nice.
You've covered it all. So let's
yeah, I can. For me, it goes full circle. I mean, from like Luke said, I went to basketball camp when I was a kid, and grew up as a fan. I was a ball boy. Denny Crum was like the guy. He was my hero because for kids, so much of it is determined by how successful a team is. At certain points in your growth. And for me, that 1980 team, I mean, they were the ones. It was right. I mean, I was 8 years old, but I remember it vividly. I watched every single game. I was locked in. And when they win the national championship, it's like the ultimate feeling. I mean, you can't describe it. I mean, there's people who go through their entire life and never experience that with their favorite team. Or like Kendrick, he's got his Dallas Cowboys Cup. I mean, it's been generations before they've won, playoff games.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
You still have not caught up.
As a U of L fan, and for the city, it was like, I mean, the Colonels had won the ABA championship in 1975, but for U of L fans, they always, it was before my time, but talking to my dad, you hear the stories. I mean, 1975, they had what many people, Bob Knight scouted him personally. One of the only times he'd ever done that to a team. He thought, whoever wins the national championship is going to have to beat that team. And, and Bob Knight's team was undefeated that year as well, lost in the tournament to Kentucky. But, they lost to UCLA. And then you think of the steps that they had to take to win that championship. And if you really think about it, I mean, I know there were less teams in the tournament, but still, you lose to UCLA in 72 in the Final Four. You lose to UCLA in 75 in the Final Four. And then who do you have to beat to win the championship in 80? That's UCLA. Even though they were like an 8 seed with a bunch of freshmen playing, but they had a pretty good coach in Larry Brown. And Louisville got over the hump there. And then they stayed at the top of the game and very well could have won multiple, 3-4 national championships in the 80s. The 82-83 team, you could that team was unbelievable. I mean, that Houston game was amazing, and they easily could have won the national championship as well. If not at altitude in Albuquerque, I'm not sure they wouldn't have won that game. And then, and then to the end of it, you even go with DeJuan Wheat and losing to North Carolina in that regional final in '97. I was there for that. Dean Smith's last win as a head coach, but DeJuan sprained his ankle in the Sweet 16, and Denny did an amazing job with that. So, to me, he was like a hero who was way up here, and then I got to know him and interviewed him multiple times. Sometimes, he came to the station for the last time I really did an in-depth interview with him, and it was so cool just to get to spend time with him and get to know him, because I think if you really ask him, the basketball stuff is great. But like Luke said, his scholarship foundation and the kids that he's helped, that's the most important thing to him. Helping people and all the charity work he did, that would be at the top for him. But the thing is, to be able to do that, you win games. And he's kind of the ultimate winner. When you look at what he did at UCLA under John Wooden, and then to come to Louisville and take a program that it's not like they hadn't had success. I mean, they'd been to the Final Four in 1959. They had Butch Beard and Wes Unseld in the 60s and Eddie Whitehead and guys like that. But, Denny got he got some of the top level recruits, obviously from Louisville, Darrell Griffith and Phil Bond and Jerry Eves and guys like that. But they also went to the South and got guys like Derek Smith and Wiley Brown and people like that. And were able to sustain winning. The one thing I will say, you can point, there's a line in 86, 87, and the 3-point shot is really what dropped Louisville, because they never really fully adapted to that. And and you can point to one thing I think that cost them at least maybe one more national championship, and that's Wade Houston going to Tennessee, because if Allen had ended up here, he would have hit some threes.
Yeah, a few. He probably would, or Al, as some of his friends like to call him.
Yeah.
Charlie Ward.
Charlie
Watch this later. That's for you.
Is Charlie Ward? I've never heard Kendrick talk about Charlie Ward. Is he normally on here?
Charlie Ward
brings him up every time.
Normally on here. He is. This is a travel day for him, so he sends his love and condolences.
I don't know if you've noticed, Lloyd, but Kent's an extremely jealous person.
Is he jealous? I've never seen that in him. I've never picked up that trait.
See it every day.
That's quite a statement you just made there. I have an interesting relationship with Louisville as a fan, because just like Ken and I are around the same age. So just like Ken, I'm in Arkansas at the time, and my mom gets married at the end of 79, literally at the end of 1979.
If you bring up U.S. Reed, Lloyd, I'm getting off.
Huh?
If you bring up U.S. Reed, I'm hanging up.
No. I'm not. I'm actually not, because I was, I'm loving, but I was like initially an Arkansas fan, because I'm like, I live in the state. And so I had this weird relationship, because when she moved, she got married to this guy, this random guy that I never met, and decided to move to this city called Louisville. I'm like, what the hell is a Louisville? So all of a sudden, I see this team, Louisville, and they're beating Arkansas, and they're beating this team. I'm like, wait a minute, this Louisville thing might be all right. So I may be able to get on board with it. So I have a very strange relationship with Louisville that I fell in love with it through marriage. But
to a random guy.
I know it's random, right? But it's been great. And Denny Crum, man, I tell you what, that 85-86 run for me was wild, because like you said, there were a lot of good teams, and in 82 and 83, I was heartbroken as a kid, because I'm like, Houston was, but going into the game, because I'm in Arkansas, but I'm rooting for Louisville, I knew Houston was going to be tough, because I'm like, I don't know how we're supposed to beat these guys that can dunk from everywhere, and this guy who won't let you come to the middle. And it was a lot of challenges going into that game. But I felt like Louisville maybe had a chance. But so it's been a wild ride. But Denny was so masterful in his game plans. Every team that I ever saw, even in the games, Luke, you're talking about in the years you played. Listen, I never seen a Louisville team that didn't compete. They always competed hard. They always played hard. He was always prepared. And he seemed to understand who he was the opponent was. Whether he could beat him or not, he knew who he was playing and he was ready. So I always admired him for that, man. It's a life lesson that we can all take to always be ready for whatever the situation presents.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Howie, we got our fingers crossed. Are you ready for it?
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Let's see. There we go.
Oh man! So I did go ahead and pull over, and we got the laptop out. So we a whole different device. We're good. All right. So I born in '79. I went to Louisville in '97, and all my family was up here in Louisville. I grew up out in the state, right? And so I was a Louisville fan growing up because all my family's in Louisville, and it made it easier being a Louisville fan out in the state, right? That whole '80s run, because I could say I could point to success and I could point to Final Fours and championships, and it was such an odd thing for me to be a Louisville fan in Bowling Green, Kentucky. That it was like a little club that we were a part of, and the sense that I got the last couple of days from Louisville fans is just it's like everybody's grandpa died, right?
Yeah.
It's that he made so much time for so many different people, never felt like you were inconveniencing him for a picture or a word or I mean he was so easy to embrace and embrace so many fans that we all felt like we knew him, and knew him well enough that I mean there was a genuine sense, and I think there will be a genuine sense of mourning for these next several days, because we all felt like he was such a big part of our childhood or such a big part of our family, that it does feel like a loss. I mean, in explaining that to other people in other cities, they're like, he's a basketball coach. What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, but it's different here, right? And it's different when he was such a big part of your childhood and your family and your growing up experience. The one other thing that I would point out about Denny is, because he picked Louisville, it brought a sense of pride, I think, to the city. He could, and you guys probably talked about this, he could have gone back to UCLA so many times. He could have gone to other schools so many times. He's not from here. He made this place his home by choice. And somebody picking Louisville, right, is different than somebody growing up here and just being from Louisville.
Yeah.
It's nice to be from Louisville. I mean, it's nice to be Kentuckian, and that's, part of your home and your heritage, but he chose to be one of us.
Yeah.
And that's a different thing. And I think it certainly built into the pride of, he's one of us now.
He's so Louisville, you forget that he was anywhere else.
Right.
Like, you forget that this is the guy that recruited Bill Walton. Like, you forget that. Right?
Yeah.
Luke, I gotta ask you, in your relationship with him, what's some of the things that you take away and you say, I'll never forget he told me that, if you can share that?
Yeah, for sure. I would say from a player's perspective, the thought of, it's not a loss, it's a lesson. Everything for him was really him sharing wisdom and things that you could take away from the court and away from the game and apply to life. And so for me, those were those moments of, like I said, if something was really challenging, he always knew how to keep his composure. He had his emotional intelligence was through the roof, I would say. And so that's something I've applied for myself and tried to apply for myself in life and in business and things to be successful after the game. Attention to detail was another thing that he was really big on. I know he went hard with us in practice. When I first got here, I had to learn how to use the backboard on a whole nother level. Prior to being here, I'd use it on layups most of the time.
Yeah.
But he had us shooting deep jump shots off the glass, and you're gonna learn how to use that backboard really well. So like the attention to small details, I think, was really important and something that I think helped him find a lot of success in his career. After the game of basketball, because some of you know, I played 1 year for him, my freshman year. And then Coach Pitino came in, and I played through that transition the remainder of my career under Coach Pitino. But was able to remain in close contact with Coach Crum up until this week, I would say. And for me, his door was always open. He was always so quick to respond and share advice. I remember one time, and this wasn't that long ago, this might have been 5 years ago, I had a basketball camp for the kids called the Louisville Legends Camp. And I reached out and to see if he would come by and do a cameo and speak to the kids. And I'll never forget, he said, "Luke, I'm getting pretty old, buddy. I don't do camps anymore. But if it'll help you be successful, I'll be there."
Wow.
And so he showed up, and I remember talking to Jonathan, who really helped manage a lot of his career and things he was doing. And he said, "Hey, it depends on what type of day it is. He may stay for a few minutes. He may stay longer." And I said, "Hey, even if he just stops by to take a picture, that'd be great." He comes into the gym. He sits down with the kids. He stays for about an hour. Wow. He tells all these stories about John Wooden and how he got into the game. And, the players asked him, the kids asked him, "Who's your favorite player that you've ever coached?" And his answer was, "I can't pick one. I love them all." Yeah. And so that was maybe political answer from him, but I think it just showed his character there. He stayed for about an hour. He took the championship rings off his finger and gave them to the little 7 and 8 year olds. And I said, "Coach, you sure? Wait a minute." He said, "Oh, it's fine, Luke. They're not going to break them." And then after he talked for about 30 minutes, he sat there and signed 150 autographs of kids' sneakers and jerseys and whatever they passed to him, he was signing. And so I thought that was something that showed, even when he was, like I said, probably about 80 years old, he came there to do that for a former player. He didn't have to do that. Yeah. My wife and I, when we got married, it was at his house, at his estate on the lake. He opened the doors. Him and Susan opened their doors and were witnesses to our small, intimate wedding. Awesome. And so that was something I'll never forget. One of his dogs was named Luke, which is kind of a funny story because this whole time I've been walking around with my chest a little high saying, "Coach loved me so much he named his dog after me." Cool recently, I found out he had a nickname of Cool Hand Luke. And so that gave me a little slice of humble pie. But, he never told me that. I said it to him. I said, "Oh, you named your dog after me?" And he just winked at me and smiled. And so I thought that was this whole time. I never knew. I thought, that was my special place. And so with him. But there's a ton of stories to share about, really the love he's displayed for so many of his former players and fans included, and doing things he doesn't have to do, but that things that he wants to do is something we all should take a lesson from. Doing things to try to make a difference and uplift others is really what I take away from him.
This is going to sound like a weird statement, but Kent, I think you'll appreciate it. It feels like when he came to Louisville grabbed a hold of an identity that it had longed for quite some time, and he brought something that it was missing, and it infused into the city, and it kind of changed the city. Like there was a pride that kind of came with his arrival. Would you agree or disagree with that, kid?
100%. I mean, you look at, obviously basketball means so much here and always has. But for fans around here, I mean, Kentucky had so much success with Adolph Rupp winning, national championships in the 40s and the 50s and going to Final Fours and stuff. And for Louisville, I mean, there had been the Final Four in 59, losing to Jerry West, and they'd had good teams, but never, getting over that mountaintop. And what he did that first year, going to the Final Four with a bunch of, players who hadn't really had as much success, in 72, it's pretty phenomenal to get there at that point. I mean, because, it's so much different back then. There aren't as many teams who make the tournament. They're not in a major conference. I mean, right. For years, for most of his career, really all of his, Conference USA was the biggest conference they were in during the course of his career. Fans of a certain age, they don't realize, what it was like. I mean, you hear so much of the talk on the national shows is about how they played that tough early season schedule to get ready. Right. Well, one of the reasons they did that is because he knew, the Metro, while I mean, tough. I mean, there were some schools who went on and are now in bigger conferences now, but still, I mean, they weren't going to get that same level of competition during the course of the season. But he didn't duck anybody. But he went. Yeah, you're right. Winning that, getting to the Final Four, winning that national championship, and then and as Holly talked about earlier, staying here. Because he had in 75, John Wooden has said he wanted Denny Crum.
He offered it to him, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Huh?
They offered it to him.
Yeah.
Right after
he had opportunities, and he thought, you know what? I mean, he realized, as many of us have, that this is a pretty good place to live, and having not lived anywhere else, but he lived in California. It's just different. He said, like Luke. I mean, he wouldn't have had a big spread where he could have weddings for former players in LA. That would certainly come at a cost. So, and plus, we're not talking about now. College coaches make big money in a lot of places. That wasn't the case back then. I mean, really, Denny didn't make big money by today's standards ever. At the time, he was certainly well compensated for what he was doing. But yeah, you're right, though. It did give Louisville, it was like, hey, we can do it. This is a place where you can do it. And then a whole fan base kind of developed around that, right, and led to, sellouts in Freedom Hall and eventually building the KFC Yum Center and all those kinds of things.
I want to get this one over to Kendrick and Howie, because you guys will probably have a unique perspective, because you kind of came into the covering of Louisville a little bit later. You can make it a case that the entire, with all due respect to Tom Jurek, you can make a case that the entire Louisville sports was built on the back of Denny Crum.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to say. I think Tom would say the same. So much of that war chest that they used to essentially invent women's sports at Louisville was built on those TV contracts. I mean, again, it was through the Metro. There were several advantages with the Metro, and one of those was that they could form their own TV deals. And people in this town watch more college basketball than anywhere else in the world, and have for 30 years now. So we all watch these games, whether it's UK or U of L, we watch college basketball. And so that TV deal and the monies behind that set up a war chest that built Cardinal Park, built all these different stadiums, built all the Title IX success that came later, built the natatorium, built all these different, absolutely. So much of that came from the success of Denny Crum. And frankly, this massive Adidas deal that Louisville's still under and reaping the benefits of, none of that happens without Denny Crum. I mean, none of it, absolutely none of it. And so while Tom is incredible, and I'll sing his praises forever, the genesis of modern day Louisville athletics was absolutely Denny Crum and his success.
Right, because if you think about it, at that time, growing up, and me, Lloyd, Howie, Kent, all can remember those times when they were giving away U of L football tickets in Kroger. Tickets in class.
Melton's Food Mart.
We were turning them down in class. Like, I'm sorry, I'm busy that day.
Right, and all that changed. So U of L was it. The Colonels had gone away, and so with the Louisville Catbirds was around at some point. But U of L basketball was Louisville's professional sport, and to this day it still is, for the most part, the way we cover it. And all of that is due to Denny and due to Denny winning.
Yeah. Cord Franklin asked a very interesting question here, Luke. He said, what was one specific thing that Crum did as a coach that you didn't like then, but as a man you appreciate now and you understand why he did it? That's a great question.
That's a great question. I would say one thing was taking a long time to review a game and really go over and over. I mean, it felt like it was like a 4-hour or 5-hour session of just going over every small detail and mistake and thing that we could have corrected. And I just remember looking back and saying, oh, this is just, come on, let's just move on, is really what I was feeling like at the time. And now that I'm older, I realize, you really have to learn from your mistakes and take time to use them as an opportunity. Like I said earlier, like he taught us that it's not a loss, it's a lesson.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to slow down. People are so quick, and I've seen it. And I have a son now that's playing high school basketball. Cash, shout out to Cash Whitehead at Ballard High School. And he loves to watch his highlights. And, you know, it's more important to watch the mistakes you made rather than the baskets that went in. Yeah. And so that's something that I'm passing on from Coach Crum, to really slow down and take time to learn from, like I said, learn those lessons for improvement and development, rather than, you know, nowadays these kids want to sing, get pats on the back and put highlight videos with the music on them. But Coach Crum took the time to really make you learn from those errors.
I'll throw this out to anybody, whoever wants it. Do you think it will be a way for us as Louisvillians to help the world understand, the basketball world specifically, that really Denny is on par with the Coach K's, with the with the Krzyzewskis, with the Tom Izzo? Do you think the basketball world today understands that?
I think there is a part of the, because I was watching it, obviously, sitting here without a job for a period of time here. I had a lot of time to watch some stuff on, and I was wondering how ESPN would treat it, Yeah. And pardon the interruption. He was a topic on Part of the Interruption. Yeah. Scott Van Pelt did an entire thing on Denny. So that kind of made me feel good that they do understand it. As far as the fans, though, the thing is, kids don't remember what happened last year.
Right.
So, and we are a little bit, while, we're older, we remember it pretty vividly. We are pretty far removed, especially from 1986 and a national championship then. And plus, having lived through it and been right in the middle of it, you get a different feel from it. But yeah, maybe that is our job. Maybe we should do that a little more, because I will say this, and Luke could speak to this too, but honestly, of any coach in the history of college basketball, if you have a timeout and you need to run one play, I'm going to have Denny Crum run.
Denny Crum. And it's not even close.
Yeah.
And it's not even close.
Right up until he passed.
Right.
That's why it was a shame there was such a disconnect between Tom Jurich and Crum and the way that nasty ending, because that was really, I think, Coach Pitino, for all his motivation and all, everything, the innovation, he's one of the greatest basketball coaches ever too. But boy, how nice would it have been if they could have teamed up? Like the perfect combination there.
Yeah, if he could just have a play a game, right?
Right.
Just had in his back pocket. I do think it's incumbent on those of us who were there to keep the name alive and to say, when people say, if you had one coach to draw up a play, it's incumbent on us to say Denny Crum, right? Because people just forget. Like I'm constantly struck by younger fans that I interact with about how little they know about the 70s and 80s. And I'm the same. I don't know enough about the 50s and 60s. People mention these guys, and I'm like, I don't know who that is, right? So it's up to us old heads now to say, right?
Oh my God, we're the old heads.
Yeah, we are. Say, you didn't have anything on Denny Crum. Like that. Yeah. He's Cool Hand Luke. And yeah, I don't think people understand just how good he was. And I do wonder if part of that is that Louisville didn't necessarily have the NBA success, perhaps, of their alumni that maybe some other schools did.
Right.
But frankly, that's even more of an indicator of what a great coach he was. Like, they had NBA success, certainly, but not like the Carolinas and the Dukes, and you know what I mean. But that's a even bigger indicator to me of how dominant his teams were in the 80s. They were the team of the 80s, and there are only a handful of players that you could point to and say, look at how long their NBA careers were.
Yeah.
Griff to this day is probably it out of that.
No, well, the thing about the NBA success is it just wasn't in the right places.
Right.
Rodney McRae won NBA championships with the Bulls and the Rockets.
Yeah.
And was a great NBA player. Derek Smith was at one point you could argue the best shooting guard in the NBA before he got hurt, and had it certainly a successful NBA career. And then Griff, he scored over 10,000 points and has his number retired, but it's in Utah.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he's still not in the Basketball Hall of Fame, which, I was like, how do you have your number retired in college and the NBA?
Right.
And that doesn't warrant you being in the Basketball Hall of Fame. So,
but
maybe it was just not in the right. And Junior Bridgman had a successful NBA career with the Bucks
forever.
Also, there wasn't quite the TV coverage at that time.
Right.
You're not getting games on TNT every night and things like that. Griff, how many times was he on TV in Utah?
Probably,
just a different time. And if he had been picked by Boston, who knows what would So
Kent, you brought it up, so I'll piggyback on it. And I wanted to ask Luke, how important was the reconnect, if I can say it that way, of having Kenny Payne come in and kind of bringing the old guys back again? Because there was a massively sized gap for a while of what we call the old program and the new program. And you have a unique position because you're the bridge. So what was that moment like for, if you could speak to that for Coach Crum?
Yeah, I think it was extremely important. And I would say, and I know Ken had mentioned it earlier, it seemed like there was a disconnect when, obviously, and it was very visible within the community. There was a disconnect when Coach Pitino came in. I think he really was trying to, in some ways, disassociate and say, hey, I want to make this my thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to is there a little bit of a connection?
Not on our end. You sound great. You look great.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it froze on my end for a second.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would say there was a disconnect there, and I guess it was in some ways intentional. When you see it even in the workplace, sometimes when new leaders come in and they try to create a new team. But when Coach Matt came in, he started to reach out more, and even when David was coaching for the temporary year, the interim year, I think he pulled Coach Crum back in a little more. Coach Matt came in and pulled Coach Crum in a little more. And you started to see a little more of that family dynamic come into play. And now with Coach Payne coming in, he's really doubled down on the fact that this is something special. This is a family. It's going to take all of us to come together as a community, former players. It's in some ways a brotherhood. And we could help. We could help with this, with rebuilding this brand and trying to get it back to that level of status that it had in the 80s. And we've had also a lot of success, obviously, during Pitino's era as well. But I think it's extremely important, and I'm happy that it occurred, that there was a reconnection, I would say, that the court was named, after Coach Crum, and it was transferred into the Yum Center. All of those things I think were great. As I said, being able to give him flowers while he could still smell them was super important. And in his passing, I think it is up to us to continue to give those flowers. I'd love to see not only a documentary about Coach Crum's life, but I think it could be a heck of a movie, with the paid, the big production, I would say, because it was a movie in many ways, his life and the story and the journey and the basketball greatness and the, building this impressive program and all the pride that came with it. A big part of why he stayed is why I stayed in Louisville. I'm from California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's a lot of awesome things going on out on the West Coast. I chose to plant my roots here in Louisville because there's something special about playing for U of L and being in this community, the love you receive from the fans and the media. It is in many ways NBA status. It's a culture, and it's something special that you don't find in a lot of other communities. Even when you see teams that have a lot of success, a lot of times they're competing with NBA teams in their city. A lot of times they're competing with other programs that are super close. But U of L, and I'll say in UK, in the state of Kentucky, we have something really special here. And I'm excited because I think we're going to get back to that level of greatness. And this culture is rich for it. And it's just something really unique. So
did Kent and Kendrick show you the love you deserve, Lou? Because if they haven't, we can reprimand them right now.
they went above and beyond.
Above and beyond. Okay, all right.
Let me tell you a story. Actually, before, nowadays they have all these recruiting guys, and I mean, they pretty much cover it. Like, I remember when Luke was at Oak Hill, it was probably the last time we actually could break on the news that a guy had come. I remember talking to Steve Smith when Luke had actually committed to U of L.
Wow.
That's how old I am.
Wow.
Even though Luke still looks like he could play.
Yeah, Kent, don't age me. Don't age me.
I will say this though. Luke mentions, giving him his flowers and everything. Important to note, one thing we haven't talked about is the Denny Crum Hall, and having that facility, naming it after him. I'm guessing, I don't want to speak out of school, but I think Vince Tyree had a lot to do with that. He understood, the history and the tradition, and that was really the last public appearance that we saw Denny. And it's just cool that, because so many times things like that might happen after somebody passes away, but he was able to at least experience. And how could you not feel the love when you see your name on a building like that? And so that was pretty cool.
Right. And being inside of there, because I went in there for the grand opening or whatever, and ribbon cutting, and he's prominent in there. I mean, there's a lot of history in there, and that dorm is unbelievable. And the way these kids live these days, Jesus Christ! But
it's not the way we did it, right?
No.
It sets a high bar for after. I don't know. Like, I always wonder, like, where are you expecting to live when you get out? Because I've never lived anywhere this nice.
That was nicer than my first apartment.
Right? Yeah.
Kent, you mentioned Oak Hill Academy. Shout out to my alma mater. I remember a story when Coach Crum came and was recruiting me, and he came to pick me up really at Oak Hill, and he landed. It was in Oak Hill. For those of you that don't know, is a basketball powerhouse, and there's been a ton of NBA players. It might be the high school with the most NBA players ever to come out of it, but it's in such a small town in the mouth of Wilson. The middle of nowhere.
You smell the Christmas tree farm as you're driving in.
Yeah, it's 2 hours to drive to the closest airport. But Coach Crum lands on the soccer field in a helicopter.
Oh, wow.
And gets out, and he's just gliding on the grass, walking over to me, and all the students are gathered around, and they're like, "He's here for you, Luke." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my buddy." And he comes over and shakes my hand, and we talk, and I'll never forget that moment of him landing in a helicopter and that experience, and being able to get on a private jet to fly to Louisville for my visit, and things of that nature. The experience was, like I said, there's a lot of movie like situations that occurred, and I just think those memories are with all of us in many different ways.
There will be a memorial. I'm
7 years old and never been on a private jet.
Yeah, me. I'm a little older.
That's kind of.
You know what? We do have a button for that, don't we? We typically. Yeah, that's good.
And that was a humble flex.
You know what I'm saying? Just I got you. There will be a memorial on Monday, May 15th at the Yum Center at 7 p.m. Eastern, right? Is that right? Yes. I expect an Ali-type presence, if I can say it that way. Like, I think that place is going to be jam-packed, standing room only. And that's weird to say about an 18,000-seat building, but I think it will be packed in there. How do you surmise a life like that in just a couple of hours? That's the real question. You
don't. And it's one of those things. It'll be a celebration that'll go. I mean, it'll be a celebration all week.
Yeah.
Of his life, some way or somehow or another. I think it would have been cool to have it at Freedom Hall, being that's where he coached at. But the Yum Center is nice, so I get it. But it's going to be, and it's going to be a great celebration on Monday night because I would imagine everybody's going to come back. It's going to be great to see old faces. It's always that's the I guess the lighter side of funerals and things like that is because it does bring people back together. It is kind of a reunion, so it'll be great to see a lot of those old guys again. And because I'm sure, Luke, you'll see some of your old teammates and things like that. And so it's going to be, I think, just a great celebration of life on Monday night.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it, and I think it will be a packed house. And I was going to say, I don't know if they need to call you three in for some help right now, because there's going to be a lot of time spent right now from now until Monday getting these videos together. The highlight, journey video of Denzel Crum is going to be epic.
A lot of leisure suits.
A lot of suits, I got to see if I can find a red suede blazer. I'm trying to see if I could find one in my size, but no, I think there's going to be a ton of former players coming and speaking, and just some really awesome memories and flowers given to the man that deserves them so much. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm wondering. I hope it's a sellout. I mean, I hope people treat this like it's a championship game and really come ready to smile and maybe shed a few tears as well.
Sure. Like I said, I think he's the reason why Louisville as a city became Louisville. I really do. And that's wild to say because Louisville is also known for Muhammad Ali. But you can make a strong case that the true identity of Louisville is rooted and grounded in Denny Crum. So
well, what Muhammad Ali accomplished was so much all over the world.
Right.
He was from here, but what he accomplished was all over the world. Denny, what he accomplished was here.
And for Louisville. It was
when you think about all the success of a program, all the Final Fours, 3 national championships, whatever. They won 3 national championships, but when who's the one person you think of first? It's not even a contest, really.
No,
yes, Griff is phenomenal, and obviously they don't win, and all that. But I mean, it's Denny Crum.
It's Denny Crum.
Yeah, right. It's the architect. It's the mad scientist himself. I don't know this because I'm not in Louisville right now. But
yeah, they are going to stream it. I'm sure everybody will stream it, and I think they'll stream it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll probably be carrying it live, I would imagine. But,
well, I mean, it is kind of the biggest news story.
As Kent can relate, you never know out here.
It's going to be.
Yes, they all should.
It should be.
It should be live streamed and carried live on all the networks around here.
Luke, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about what you got going on with your Mixed Nation and anything else you want to share. So please feel free, brother.
No, I really appreciate that. I won't even make it about Mixed Nation or me. You already called me out for the humble jet flex.
No, because that's what we do. We acknowledge folk in their stuff. I mean, we do that.
I would say with Mixed Nation, it's a positive multicultural brand and movement trying to celebrate diversity and inspire inclusion. And you could go to mixednation.com to check out more. We also have the Mixed Nation Foundation, which is the 501c3. And we try to really teach people to love one another for their differences as well as commonalities. The world needs more unity right now. There's a lot of hatred and polarization. And I think Mixed Nation is something that is really I created to bring people together. Based on my multicultural background, having a white mother and a black father, and that many times feeling kind of caught in the middle, trying to bring people together, is what inspired me to create Mixed Nation after I hung up my basketball shoes. I'll say one plug that has something to do with Coach Crum as well is we're working right now on a documentary about my father, Eddie Whitehead, Wade Houston, and Sam Smith. And this is through the Mixed Nation Foundation. We're honored to have Kendrick involved in the project as well. We're putting together something to really honor the fact that they broke the color barrier in 1962 by being the first 3 African Americans to integrate into the program. And so it highlights some of the challenges they faced and obstacles they were able to overcome, being able to be successful on and off of the basketball court throughout their career. So rest in peace to Sam Smith, who passed away. We were fortunate enough to be able to bring him here into Louisville and to capture his story for the documentary before he passed. So his story will live on as well. And there's going to be a lot of former players sharing some stories and their experiences. And one story that we're going to talk about also is Coach Crum actually had one of the first all-black starting 5s at the University of Louisville.
Wow. Wow.
And he actually, the program and himself and the team caught some hate around it. This was in the 70s, and some fans were not very happy about it. And from what I was told, Coach Crum took a stand and had a article in the newspaper that basically said, it's not about color to me. I am and will always start and play the best players, no matter what color they are. And so if you have a problem with it, don't come to the games. So it was one of those things where, some fans said, oh, we might boycott the games. And Coach Crum said, this is gonna be the best basketball, the best teams we can create. And so he took a stand even back then. And I thought that was a beautiful story that was shared, and it would be featured in the documentary as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate, we're kind of touching on it at the end, but the importance of just that. I mean,
Right.
Luke mentions Eddie Whitehead and Wade Houston, Sam Smith, and those guys. And then Denny came on and continued to recruit the best black players. And for a suburban white kid like me at the time, I don't know any different. My heroes are Daryl Griffith and Derek Smith and Rodney McCray and Charles Jones. And, I go to the camps and I meet Derek Smith and, feel like I get to know him and stuff. And then you don't know any different, and that's important, because a lot of times people don't have those opportunities, especially that early in life. But, Denny gave that to generations of kids here in Louisville.
And that probably is at the greatest part of his legacy, is that he was fearless. He did what he thought was best to make this program become what it was supposed to become. And that's just, what a testimony, man. What a legacy.
You got to think about the era he was doing that in. I mean, this is the early 70s.
We're crazy.
We're just coming out of marches and everything.
Right.
The whole civil rights movement. And he's doing this from day one in 1972 at his first coaching job. I mean,
right.
And part of it may be because of his background at UCLA. It's a little different out there. And John Wooden had already, had some black players and been successful doing it. And maybe the mindset a little different than in some, Louisville's not quite the South, but still, there's a lot of that here. Right. So, that too.
We could for sure go on and on and on, but I know we've come to the end of the road on this. But if you guys really want to go to a celebration, go grab your tickets to the celebration Monday, May 15th. Free tickets, okay. KFC Yum Center, 7 p.m. Eastern is the time. If you can't get in the building, I'm sure they're going to have it streaming somewhere or on some TV.
If not, email Kendrick and complain.
Yeah, just
or call
Kendrick
him.
Is the guy now.
502.
Yeah. We'll put it in the comments.
I've had enough.
We'll put it in the comments. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I don't have to deal with them every day anymore. So now it's just like
Hey, I know we're closing the show and everything. I did want to, and we mentioned it briefly earlier, I did want to thank Kent and Kendrick for your media coverage of the program and times you covered myself as well. You deserve flowers as well. A lot of times you all are unsung heroes, and people don't realize how much work you put into knowing the game, learning the game, following and making sure people at home on the comforts of their couch can know what's going on with the Cardinals. So thank you both very much. And Lloyd, thank you for having me on the show as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Luke. And thank you, Lloyd. And I guess Kendrick.
It was an honor to have you guys. And it was an honor to to talk about a man who was worth talking about. The one true Denzel in our lives that we truly all are connected to. The late great Denny Crum. Peaceful journey, my brother. Peaceful journey. You've been listening to Believe in the ACC with Charlie Ward, Lloyd Spence, and Kendrick Haskins. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share from the Noisemakers page on Facebook and on YouTube. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be heard.